Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Minds of Mortgage podcast. I am really excited today to have Christy Soukhamneut, who is an amazing female leader in mortgage. Tell me currently, Christy, your role, I just want to make sure that I have it right. Tell me what your role is right now.
So, a year and a half ago, roughly, I joined University Federal Credit Union here in beautiful Austin, Texas. We're having lovely weather today as the Chief Lending Officer.
Fantastic. Chief Lending Officer. I wanted to make sure that I got that right, but mostly I wanted to make sure I got you guys go by your acronym, correct? I mean, you go by your initials, but
UFCU, that is correct.
I tried so hard to find your full name and I'm like, I'm going to screw this up on the podcast, but I love it because that's a very modern way, to have a moniker. Yeah, I get it. I love it. You are in Austin. Have you been in Austin for your whole career?
No, moved to Austin for this role. And in fact, this weekend marks 1 year in my house, literally, that we moved the stuff from my tiny little apartment to my house where I had been, one bed, one couch, and four chairs, and that was, six plates. That was it. And it took a little while to get everything moved out of Georgia. We've been in Georgia for 25 years, down in Savannah, lovely part of the world as well. But we are getting settled here in Austin and just adore it.
What drew you to UFCU?
You think about the opportunities that we have, and I think for folks inside of mortgage, this is going to be like, of course, for folks outside of mortgage, if they happen to jump in on your podcast, they're not going to understand that people in mortgage don't have resumes. Oh. You get calls from recruiters and you hear about opportunities, and things are done just a little different here. So I got a call from a recruiter one day and they're like, "Hey, we have this amazing opportunity. You should talk to people." And I was like, like we all do, very happy. It's all great. And gave them a list of names. You should talk to these folks. They're looking. Get a call back another month or so later and they're like, "Yep, we talked to those folks. They still really want to talk to you." And I was like, "All right, one conversation. And then I had one conversation with my now boss that turned into another conversation and really 6 months worth of conversations as we got to know each other. And there is something profoundly different at this organization than most any organization that I've ever been at. One, you think about the mission. Our aspiration is to be loved by millions of members, and loved is a key word. I mean, think about the brands and the people that you do business with. How many of them do you love? You might like them, but how many of them do you love? If I wear my UFCU gear around town, literally every time somebody comes up and stops me and tells me how much they love our organization, what we did that was life-changing to impact them. And that really is our purpose of existing. Our purpose of existing is to create financial wellness and brighter futures for each of our members. And we really live into that. Every day we make decisions based on that. And so when you think about the opportunity to show up to work every day and create an impact in somebody's life, that means they can pay their rent, or it means they can have a car to get to work, or it means they have a home to raise their children in. Those things are impactful. So I get to do that every day. So why not do it at someplace amazing like this?
I mean, I genuinely have a hard time imagining that, right? Coming from solving for love, that's such an incredible and an admirable position to think about the people who entrust you with, their money and helping them through financial decisions. I mean, imagine if we had changed the conversation from, we're just going to help you with your loan into really, we're going to provide you with love and support forever. That's incredible.
That's the commitment. We want to see your financial well-being be what you want it to be and create that success. And that looks a little different for each person, but we get to step into that mission with them every time we have a conversation. So I don't take that lightly.
Yeah. I think that's incredible. Tell me how, we talked about how you went from Savannah to Austin, which by the way, must have been an interesting kind of culture shock. Those are such different kind of cities. I can see some similarities, but was it kind of surprising to move from one to the other?
Well, they're missing an ocean here. You
Yeah.
know, Savannah has an ocean down
Hmm.
at Tybee where, you know, from our porch we could see the ocean. I can't see an ocean from here. I hear there's one nearby, but not quite the same.
Yeah.
But you're right, there are a lot of similarities. This is a much bigger town. However, there's amazing food, there's great live music, you know, and there's a lot of outdoor activities. They just look a little different. And so it feels very much like home because of those similarities.
Good people in both towns too. That's one thing
Absolutely.
I can say for sure is the good-hearted, good caliber of human beings.
100%. I think that's true of a lot of the southern states.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Although I was in Salt Lake City, Utah last week, and I don't know that I've ever been anywhere friendlier. People genuinely went out of their way to be kind and talkative, and it was fascinating to watch how people really drew you into a conversation no matter what you were doing. So that was kind of a neat.
I might have to plan a trip then.
Yeah, I don't I had mixed feelings about it, but the people amazing, amazing. So, well, tell me how did you end up in mortgage? Like, what was your path to getting here? Not a lot of people graduate from high school or college and go, I'm headed to mortgage. So I love asking kind of the origin story.
Has anybody ever answered that question with this is what I knew I was going to do with the rest of my
Never, not one time.
I can't I don't know. I literally don't know anybody that grew up dreaming about being in the mortgage business. And I don't know why. When you think about what we get to do, it really should be a dream or an aspiration of people to create generational wealth through home ownership, create the safety and soundness that comes from being in your own home. You know, I was lucky enough to I bought my first home the same year I got married, and I didn't really ever live in an apartment building ever. You know, went from my college dorm room to being, you know, I got married just a few weeks after graduating from college. So never had that kind of a rental space, if you will, until I was commuting back and forth for work and living in a rental space. And then going from that apartment to my house, I realized that there really is this huge difference in how you feel about your place in the community. So I do think people should, like, we should get the message out to folks. You should want to be in the mortgage business. But those of us who are already here, that's not our path. I again haven't met anybody that was their path. For me, I was in high school and a friend said, "Hey, I'm moving. I have this part-time job. They need somebody to replace me when I move. Are you interested?" I'm like, "Sure, what is it?" Right? The answer is always yes, and then, okay, tell me the details. I became an appraiser. I was working in an appraisal firm doing research and helping with appraisals. By the way, this is back in the day when you actually had to, you know, put on your wellies and get a tape measure and go measure the outside of houses. And MLS didn't exist in the form that it does today. We actually had index cards that had to be updated and filed, and that was how you got comps. So a very, very different space. Did that all the way through graduating from college. And about the time I was graduating from college, my dad went through a very bad experience with his loan. He was building my mom her dream house, and through several just mishaps, he had a horrible loan experience. And he ended up pulling his loan and talking to the investor. And if you know my dad, you know that, like, that's not normal. Most of us would not put our members or borrowers in contact with the investor, but my dad managed to make that happen. And as he was learning about what he needed to do to get his loan fixed, he said, "Well, this looks like tell me how the loan business works." And the wholesale account rep ended up explaining it to him. He's like, "Great, I think I want to open a mortgage company." And she goes, "Great, you got any experience?" He goes, "No." She goes, "Well, call me back in a year." Year goes by. I'm graduating from college at the same time. And he calls back. He says, "Hey, Julie, it's been a year. I'd like to open a mortgage company." She goes, "Great. Did you get some experience?" And he said, "No, but my daughter's graduating from college. She'd be perfect to run it." And Julie goes, "You really need some experience." And he goes, "You said call you in a year. You didn't say anything about experience." And he convinced her to come and teach me the mortgage business so that my first job could be the president and CEO of a mortgage company.
Wow. That's incredible.
Talk about jumping into the deep end.
Yes, absolutely. But it's funny because, not a lot of people have this story of, I got my college degree and I went into mortgage, and yet many, many people who I talked to, I've interviewed, have come to the mortgage industry as a result of someone they love having a bad experience with a mortgage.
Right.
That to me is one thing I do see time and again. You know, we talked a little bit before we jumped on the podcast, and you made such a good point to me. And it can be easy in the last few years to, throw the baby in with the bathwater, right? Really get pulled into some of the negative feelings, right? And I think we all strive to be really optimistic, in our approach all the time, but it can be a little, there've been some years we've been through here. But one of the things that you said was so interesting was about the opportunity in a market like this. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Kelly, it's so fascinating to me. Like I'm literally beside myself happy to come to work every day. Because when we have perfect markets, things are just humming along. There's not a lot of impetus to create new. There may be some easy opportunities to do that, but we're not taxing our brains. And when you go into markets like this, the cracks start to show and the gaps and the opportunities to improve because we're having to do things with fewer resources. And so as those cracks start to appear, that's what really creates opportunity. And if you are a person who likes to innovate, who likes to solve problems, then this is your market, right? This is the time that you can really grow. This is the time you can displace the person who's been the number one person forever. Is that the top lender in the country? Is that the top originator in your marketplace? Whatever, however you're viewing that, these are the opportunities to create change through what drives you as passion, because now you're getting to look at something that's a little different and you're seeing that crack of light that you can just tear right through and make something great. So yeah, this type of a market, while yes, it's hard, and no, I wouldn't wish it. I don't wish that we keep having these for the next 5 years. 4 years has been quite long enough. I'm glad that we've had the opportunity to go through it and create some change that better serves the people that we serve in the community.
I very much agree. I just had a conversation that was pretty interesting, but I was talking about, here we are, right? At a space where, obviously we have, I think it's like a fifth of, like 1/5 of the workforce we used to have as far as like licensed loan originators. A lot of people kind of dropped out. The pie is much smaller. And so if you're smart and you're thinking about, how you're going to be efficient, how you're going to innovate these ideas, how you're going to create these relationships, I really believe that there is an incredible opportunity for people to scale businesses this year, as long as you are prepared and like really ready and know what you want. I really feel like it's not going to be a bad year if you're in that position.
Well, look at the new data that's come out from the Mortgage Bankers Association. So IMB was just here in Austin.
Hmm.
There's good and bad to having an event in your backyard.
Yeah.
But IMB was just here, and some of the data like Marina Walsh and Mike Fratantoni shared, our good partners at MBA, talks about, we had 8 consecutive quarters where virtually nobody made money. I mean, let's just call it nobody.
Hmm.
And now we have 3 quarters of IMBs making money. So you've started to see that shift. And it's not necessarily because the market got dramatically better, margins started to improve, because I haven't really seen a lot of that yet. But you're seeing people adapt and change their business model.
Right.
And there's so much optimism. And there was so much optimism at IMB with people who are like, okay, if this is what the market is, we're prepared to be successful in this market. They have looked at the pieces of the puzzle. They figured out how to adapt them and how to make money in this market while still serving the people that we need to serve. I don't think homeownership is going to be, I saw somebody that said homeownership was going to be displaced as the American dream. I don't think that that's true. I think it's still going to be a big piece of the American dream. Maybe other things have been added to it. There's always been other pieces. People still want to own their home. For what I was talking about when we just started this podcast was, there is just a different sense of community. In fact, I still remember a recording that one of our members' parents called to talk about how thankful they were that we helped their son purchase his first home, and the difference that he had seen in his son with how responsible he was with his money and what he did in the community, and just what a difference it made. And he was so grateful that we gave his son that opportunity. I'm grateful that they called us to help make it happen.
I mean, living in a neighborhood, especially when you first start having children, those relationships that you form, they're some of the most important ones that you ever have in your life. Your kids' friends, your family friends, things like that,
Yes.
right? The community, the safety, all of those things. They're such incredibly important parts. And yet, I know right now, so many people are looking at their chances of getting that first house. What do we say to those people who are intimidated by taking the leap when houses are so expensive and interest rates are a little bit higher? How do we keep their how do we encourage that?
What's interesting, Kelly, is I bought a number of houses throughout my lifetime. My husband and I have been very lucky that as we have wanted to purchase homes, we've been able to find the one that we wanted or find one to have. And some have been better investments than others for all purposes. But every single time we've bought one, and remember, this is what I do for a living. Every single time we bought one, I've been worried we were going to be able to afford the payment. I don't think that changes no matter how much education or information that you have. It's always more than what you were paying. And so it's like, well, there never seems to be any money left at the end of the month. How are we going to do this? Somehow magically it continues to work. Now, I would encourage you to have good budget strategies and look at the dollars and talk to somebody, but it never feels great. Until you write those first couple of checks and you get to the end of the month and you're like, yep, okay, we can still buy groceries. This is hard for everybody. And so I would encourage people to know that if you just take a little bit of time, talk to a professional, right? This is not the time to talk to your mother's uncle's boyfriend's cat. This is like, pick up the phone and call a mortgage professional in your marketplace and have a conversation about budgeting. Don't go to the internet. The internet is such an interesting place. There are so many great people out there providing good information. And then there are so many yahoos that I look at what they say and I'm like, that is not true. So it's hard if you are the person trying to learn. So pick up the phone, go to your local credit union, go to your local IMB, your local bank, go and talk to the professionals that are there. Those are not yahoos. They're going to be able to tell you and spend a little bit of time with you, look at your personal situation, and get you on a path to success.
I think that's great advice. I want to union component of that for worked for larger banks. You work for a credit union now. I'm assuming at some point you probably were in the IMB space somehow. They're all such different models, and I have worked with all three. But what's special for me about the credit union is we preach relationships in mortgage, but you are genuinely in a relationship with your members. And how are you thinking about that from a data perspective? How are you thinking about that for how to prepare people to be a good homeowner? What are the initiatives you have for your members when it comes to making sure that they know that that is an option for them?
I think a lot about affordability.
Hmm.
And back to, nobody ever thinks they can afford whatever it is they're doing. It's always always a little bit of an unknown until you get there. But a lot of times we try to tackle affordability from just one place. Well, the rate needs to be lower, insurance premiums need to be different, house prices need to be different. Look in a different neighborhood. Do it like the house itself is one component.
Right.
As somebody who's invested in our members' financial well-being for their lifetime to create brighter futures, we need to look at that whole picture, and we do. So we take a look at a credit card interest rate. So the average credit card interest rate today is, let's just pull some general numbers. Let's call it 28 to 32%. Our credit card interest rates start at less than 10%, and they're fixed. So if I'm looking at a member's application and they're telling me from a budget standpoint they're a little worried about making the payments, then I can go, oh, I just noticed that you have $20,000 in credit card debt. It looks like your interest rate is 28%. You would qualify for a 9.5% interest rate with us. How about we move that balance for you if you don't pay it off every month? Same thing for somebody's car loans. What if a lot of people get into car loans because they haven't been taught to negotiate, and they get a car loan that is an astronomical interest rate, and then we could bring that interest rate, cut it in half. So we have these types of tools to better assist folks, and that impacts affordability. That impacts what you're able to do. There's not a lot I can do about your property taxes or how much your homeowner's insurance is going to cost, but I can help put you in a better position overall from your debt strategies. And so we take that opportunity when we're having conversations with members to talk about it. And heck, even if you're not a member with us today, come and let somebody take a look at that for you. Talk to your local credit union. Because what a lot of folks don't realize is that credit unions, by law, for the majority of their loan programs, can't charge more than 17.9% APR. And so if you're, I don't want to pick on any credit card provider, if your credit card interest rate is higher than that, you should pick up the phone and call a local credit union. Pick up the phone and call us and see if there isn't an opportunity to work on your other debt to make your home more affordable.
That's great advice. The world of finance, it overwhelms people, right? And we come, a lot of people come at it from a place of not understanding how money works and feeling intimidated by their lack of knowledge and feeling, embarrassed maybe by where they are now. But when you talk to somebody, a caring individual who genuinely wants for you to be able to understand how to create a better future for yourself, that's a really special human being. And I think that it just taking that first step and going in is really the hardest part, right? Or making that first phone call. But I think if people understood, especially people who have a lot of debt right now, or people who are trying to figure out how to make their life work, their budget work, things like that. Like you said, they go to the internet, but a lot of times just having somebody who cares enough to listen is the biggest first step.
You're absolutely right. I mean, Kelly, think about your day-to-day life. Like, who has made a difference in your life?
My brain trust, 100%. My financial planner, my attorney, my CPA, the people who keep me safe, is to be really fair. That those are the people I rely upon so often when I feel nervous about doing something. So those are the people who really come in strong for me.
And how did you get to those people? Like, how did you get them in your life?
I'll tell you what's interesting is that my financial planner knew me for years before I had finances to plan. And he was always so compassionate with me, because I would be like, someday when I grow up, and he's like, I think you're 38, but I'm like, someday when I grow up, I want to do these things, I want to be this person. And he spent time with me before I was ready to invest money, to just teach me the foundational things that you need to have so that you can build wealth.
There are good people out there with integrity,
Yes.
and you meet them every day in your sphere. The thing about the good folks with integrity is they're not trying to sell you.
Right.
He didn't come up to you at church and say, hey, Kelly, you got any money to invest?
Right.
You built a relationship. So I would tell people, if they don't know where to go, look around and ask the people that are already closest to you, or that are in that one next sphere. They're going to be able to point you in the right direction, or you may find that one of them has incredible knowledge to gift and share with you. None of us are born with that personal board of directors, or brain trust, as you called it. We have to develop that over a lifetime. And at the point I am in my biological age, in my career, I've been able to develop that. If you're just starting out, it's not like these people just dropped out of the sky for you or for me. Figure out who they are. And if you don't know, start with walking in the door at your credit union. Like, best place.
It's also such an interesting concept, right? Especially for this generation that's just coming up, where everything that they do is online, right? You can do online banking. Why do I even need to walk into a bank? And they may not realize that banks, credit unions, places like this, they're resources. There are human beings inside this building that provide resources. It's not just somewhere you go to cash a check or deposit a check. It truly is a place where you can go in and say, I don't really know how, exactly what I want to do, but I have some ideas. And do you have somebody who can talk to me about how to get there? And that's always a resource that's available.
Always. And they want to give it to, like, they really want to give it to you. And you think about how we grow up in the mortgage space too. We raise our hand and we ask for mentors. We go online to our industry associations and take the training classes. There's a lot of self-discovery and a little bit of personal effort that you have to put forth. And if you do that, the rewards are tremendous. I can't thank the mentors in my life enough. And they've changed over the years as I've learned and grown, and as there are different things that I need to impact my career, people that I get to meet at places like going to IMB. There's nothing like being, as an old mentor said, belly to belly with folks.
Right.
There is something about being in person and just connecting. So walk into the door of your credit union and ask for those resources. They're going to be more than happy to give them to you. Also, another good place for folks that if you're watching this and you're not in the mortgage industry, then you can go to your HR representatives.
Mm-hmm.
Your HR folks are going to be a wealth of knowledge for resources. Most employers, regardless of size, typically have some kind of financial wellness program that they offer, just like they offer the EAP programs and your health and other and mental wellness programs.
Yeah, it's super smart. You know, we when you are starting out in the world, or if you're long into the world, right? We are all finding our own path to the future. And I no matter where you are on that path, I think that we internalize that. We feel sometimes like we're not doing enough. We look around at the neighbors and we don't have as much, or we put this pressure on ourselves. But just the intention to do something different, the intention to talk to someone. Many of us who are parents, who, especially if we have young adult children, right, they want to be their own people. But yet they'll come back to us and say, hey, mom, hey, dad, I'm thinking about buying a car. What do I do now? And I hope that everyone understands that you never have to be worried about turning to someone and saying, can you provide some mentorship? Can you provide some guidance? Because there's so many people in the world who would love nothing more than to be a resource. And hopefully that is how we view ourselves within the mortgage industry and within home buying in general. Like, you may not be ready to buy a house in 2025, but that doesn't mean that you can't have a conversation about what it looks like to buy one in 2026. And the time to have that conversation is now, so that you're ready, your budgeting is ready, your credit score is ready, and you have all the knowledge and you feel so comfortable in making that decision when the time is right.
I'll tell you something that's interesting about raising your hand and reaching out for some type of mentorship or asking a question to get some kind of knowledge. I reached out to a person introduced me via Twitter to somebody. This is back in the early days of Twitter. I didn't really know much about Twitter. And somebody connected me to this person because I wanted to learn more about social media. This was back before it was the thing that it is today. Snapchat didn't even exist at this point. So, it's been a couple years. And I reached out to this person and picked up the phone and called him and said, hey, I was referred to you. I've got a couple questions. I hear you know what you're doing in social media, and then you're really being pioneering. And as I got to know this gentleman, who was, by the way, so very kind and generous with his time, it turns out he was a senior executive at a very large organization, then ultimately ended up owning his own company and doing a bunch of different things. And I asked him, I said, I was a random stranger. You barely knew the person that introduced us to each other. And I said, and I asked you for basically mentorship, and you never hesitated. Tell me why. Like, tell me what caused you to be that way, and to be that way with me. And what he said was, he said, you get so many people that reach out to you that come and they're like, mentor me, educate me. And they sit back and they want you as the mentor to do all the work. And he said, when somebody comes and they genuinely want to learn and they ask thoughtful questions and they're open, right? They're not this, they're open, and they have a desire. He said, I have a desire to pour into those people. I have never met a senior leader, a person, a person that's knowledgeable in a space who, when asked thoughtful questions, genuine questions, like it doesn't even have to be like complex, but you ask a genuine question with a genuine desire to learn, people simply want to share their knowledge. They know that they have knowledge and they're excited to impart it and help somebody else. And so don't be afraid. I would tell people, don't be afraid to ask, no matter what the question is or who the person is. I bet you're going to get a pretty positive response.
Yeah, that's it's such great advice. I'll be honest with you. I've been in the mortgage industry for 13 years, and when I started, I think I would have sawed my left arm off for a mentor, but it just wasn't a fit. I think I was looking for I just genuinely needed kind of that guidance. And back in the day, it wasn't not there wasn't a lot of coaching. There wasn't a lot of that when I started. But I wanted so much. I was so thirsty for a female leader to just mentor me. And one of the things I am bullish about and do all the time over the last few years is if I see a young woman in the industry, whether she knows me or not, whether she wants me or not, it doesn't matter. I have to reach out to her and say, hey, listen, I am always a resource, an ear, a
Right.
listener. It doesn't matter what you need. Just know that if you ever need anything, I'm right here. Whether that, I'll coach you, I'll talk you through things because it was something I think I would have just done so well with back then. And I think it's so important that we do carry that torch forward for the younger generation because it seems like you were very lucky in having, really good mentors that like took you and taught you and you weren't afraid to ask questions of and if we can provide that for the next generation of women in fintech and finance, I think that that's it's such an important thing.
Completely agree. And I say that if anybody ever wants to reach out, I may not be able to help you in like 10 seconds, but absolutely I want to make sure that we're helping people as we go through.
Yeah, passing the torch. I can't tell you how imperative it is. And I mean, if you take nothing else from this conversation, you had two human beings who genuinely have their hands in the air at all times, saying, "We want to help. We want to, just ask the question, and we'll help you out." Christy, thank you so much for spending some time with me today and for just talking about your career in mortgage and also how excited you are to be in your current position. It sounds like you're going to do some amazing things over there. So I just really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. It has truly been an honor and a pleasure.
All right, friend. Thank you so much.